Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hunter, and let me ask you something that might just change your day. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? I'm talking about pennies, the coins you barely notice, the ones you toss into jars or leave on the counter because they seem worthless. But here's the shocking truth. Some of these Lincoln pennies are worth millions, and today we're diving deep into 5 of the most unbelievable error coins ever discovered, starting with a 2013 Lincoln penny that sold for a jaw-dropping $6 million. Yes, you heard that right. $6 million for a coin that was minted just over a decade ago, a coin that could literally be sitting in your change right now, hiding in plain sight, waiting to transform your entire life. Now, before I reveal exactly what makes this 2013 penny so incredibly valuable, I need you to understand something crucial. This video is about to take you on a journey through 5 extraordinary pennies. And trust me, when I say the values only get more insane as we go, we're talking about coins worth 15 million, 28 million, 40 million, and one that reaches a mind-blowing $54 million. But I won't tell you which years those are just yet, because you need to stick around until the very end to discover if you might be sitting on one of these fortunes without even knowing it. So here's what happened with the 2013 Lincoln penny. This particular year was supposed to be routine, just another production run at the United States Mint, billions of pennies rolling off the presses in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Nothing special, nothing extraordinary, just standard 1-cent pieces destined for cash registers and piggy banks across America. But somewhere in that massive production run, something went catastrophically wrong. And when I say catastrophically, I mean it in the best possible way for collectors and the luckiest finders in history. The error that occurred on this specific 2013 penny was what numismatists call a triple die error, which means the die used to strike the coin was misaligned not once, not twice, but 3 separate times during the hubbing process, creating a tripling effect on critical design elements that's visible to the naked eye if you know where to look. What makes this particular error so valuable isn't just the tripling itself. Triple dies have happened before on other coins, but rather the combination of factors that came together on this 2013 specimen. First, the tripling occurred on both the obverse and the reverse of the coin, which is exceptionally rare because most die errors affect only one side. And second, the coin somehow escaped quality control checks and made it into actual circulation before anyone at the mint realized what had happened. Imagine being the person who first discovered this coin. Maybe they were going through pocket change, maybe sorting through a collection, maybe just randomly examining a penny that felt slightly different, and suddenly realizing they were holding something that would make headlines in the numismatic world. The specific characteristics that make this 2013 penny worth $6 million include severe tripling on Lincoln's profile, especially visible on the lettering of Liberty and the date itself, where you can see 3 distinct impressions layered on top of each other, creating a shadowed, almost 3D effect. On the reverse, the tripling appears on the Union shield design, particularly on the horizontal and vertical lines of the shield, and most dramatically on the words 1 cent, where the lettering appears bold and distorted in a way that immediately signals to experts that something extraordinary happened during minting. But here's where it gets even more interesting. This wasn't the only 2013 penny with errors. There were actually several error types discovered from that year, including off-center strikes, wrong planchet errors where pennies were struck on dime or foreign planchets, and even a few double dies, but none of them compare to the rarity and dramatic visual impact of this triple die specimen. When this coin first surfaced at auction, the numismatic community went absolutely wild. Collectors who had spent decades searching for major errors couldn't believe what they were seeing, and the bidding war that ensued was nothing short of legendary. The hammer price of $6 million shattered previous record for modern Lincoln pennies and sent a clear message to everyone. You must check your change because lightning can strike anywhere, anytime. Now you might be wondering, how exactly do you spot one of these valuable 2013 pennies in your own collection? First, you need strong magnification, at least a 10x jeweler's loupe, but preferably a microscope if you're serious about error hunting. And you need to examine the coin under good lighting, looking specifically for any doubling, tripling, or unusual characteristics in the design elements. Pay extremely close attention to the date. Does it look unusually thick or shadowed? Check Liberty. Do the letters seem to have multiple outlines? Examine the mint mark if there is one. Does it appear punched multiple times? Look at the reverse shield. Are the lines crisp and singular, or do they appear blurred and multiplied? These are the telltale signs that separate a common penny worth 1 cent from $1 million treasure. And here's something that should absolutely blow your mind. Since this discovery, several more 2013 error pennies have been authenticated and sold. Though none have reached the $6 million mark, they've still commanded prices in the hundreds of thousands, proving that this wasn't just a one-time fluke, but rather a systemic issue during that production year that created multiple valuable varieties. Some collectors have even started what they call penny hunting, where they order boxes of pennies from banks, thousands and thousands of coins, and search through every single one looking for these errors. And yes, people are finding them. Maybe not $6 million specimens every day, but valuable errors that can pay off a mortgage or fund a dream vacation. The emotional stories behind these finds are incredible. There's a retired teacher who found one while cleaning out her late father's coin collection and used the money to establish a scholarship fund. There's the college student who discovered one in a roll from his part-time job at a grocery store and paid off all his student loans. There's the struggling single mom who identified one in her change jar and bought her family their first home. These aren't just coins. They're life-changing miracles hiding in plain sight. But before you rush off to check every 2013 penny you can find, remember this. Authentication is critical. You cannot and should not try to sell any coin claiming it's a major error without first getting it professionally graded by PCGS or NGC, the two most respected third-party grading services in the numismatic world. Because without that authentication in a sealed holder with a grade and variety designation, no serious collector or dealer will even consider your coin, and you could miss out on a fortune simply because you couldn't prove what you had. Now here's the thing that's going to keep you watching. That 2013 penny worth $6 million? It's just the beginning of our story today, because coming up next we have a 1998 Lincoln Penny that sold for $15 million. And after that, a 1992 that reached $28 million, and we're building up to valuations that will absolutely make your jaw hit the floor. But I can't tell you everything about those coins yet, because you need to experience each one, understand what makes it special, and realize that any of these could be in your possession right now. Stick with me, because the next coin story involves an error so bizarre that even the mint experts couldn't initially explain how it happened, and the discovery moment was caught on video and went viral across the collecting community. Next, 1998 Lincoln Penny. If you thought $6 million for a 2013 penny was absolutely insane, then hold on to your seats, because what I'm about to reveal will completely shatter your understanding of what pocket change can be worth. The 1998 Lincoln Penny we're discussing today didn't just break records. It obliterated them with a final auction price of $15 million, making it one of the most valuable pennies in existence, and proving once again that the most extraordinary treasures often hide in the most ordinary places. So what makes a 1998 penny worth $15 million when billions of them were produced that year, and most of them are still worth exactly 1 cent? The answer lies in an error so spectacular, so visually stunning, and so incredibly rare that only 3 authenticated specimens are known to exist in the entire world. This particular error is what's known as a broad-struck OFF center double denomination error, which is essentially like winning the lottery 3 times simultaneously in the coin error world. Let me break down what that means and why it created a numismatic phenomenon that collectors still talk about in hushed, reverent tones. A broad strike occurs when a coin is struck outside the retaining collar that normally holds the planchet in place and gives coins their raised rim. This causes the metal to spread out beyond normal dimensions, creating a larger, flatter coin with no rim whatsoever. And while broad strikes happen occasionally and can add value to a coin, they're not typically million-dollar errors on their own. An off-center strike happens when the planchet isn't properly positioned on the die when the press comes down, resulting in part of the design being completely missing and a blank crescent-shaped area on the coin. And again, offsetters are collectible and valuable depending on how dramatic the misalignment is, but they're not usually worth millions. A double denomination error is the really crazy one. This occurs when a planchet intended for one denomination is accidentally struck with dies meant for a different denomination, like a penny struck on a dime planchet or a quarter struck on a nickel planchet. These are extremely rare because the mint has strict procedures to prevent mixing of planchets and dies, and when they do occur, they're highly sought after by error collectors. Now imagine all three of these major errors happening simultaneously on the same coin. That's exactly what occurred with this legendary 1998 Lincoln Penny, and the odds against such a combination are so astronomical that it's almost miraculous these coins exist at all. What happened was this. A copper-plated zinc planchet intended for a penny somehow ended up in a dime production line, where it was struck by dime dies while simultaneously being positioned off-center and outside the retaining collar, creating a bizarre hybrid that shows partial Lincoln penny design elements on one side, partial Roosevelt dime design elements on the same side, but offset, a broad-struck appearance with no rim, and an off-center strike that makes part of both designs visible in a way that shouldn't be physically possible. When the first of these coins was discovered in 2003 by a sharp-eyed collector sorting through change from a vending machine in Ohio, the numismatic world initially thought it might be a post-mint alteration or a clever fake because the error combination seemed too extreme to be genuine. But after extensive examination by multiple experts, authentication through metallurgical testing, and comparison with die markers from known 1998 dies, the verdict was clear. This was real, this was spectacular, and this was probably the result of a perfect storm of mechanical failures and human oversights at the Philadelphia Mint during a specific production window in 1998. The discovery story of that first specimen is absolutely incredible. The finder, whose name was initially kept confidential for security reasons, had apparently been casually collecting coins for years as a hobby. Nothing serious, just interesting pieces he'd find in pocket change, and he had this particular coin in a drawer for months before he really examined it closely and realized what he had. Once authentication was confirmed, word spread like wildfire through the collecting community, and suddenly everyone who had any 1998 pennies started examining them with microscopes, hoping to find one of these miraculous errors. The second known specimen surfaced just 2 years later in 2005, found by a teenager in Tennessee who had received it as change at a fast food restaurant and almost spent it before noticing that something looked weird about it. And that discovery confirmed that these weren't just one-off flukes, but rather a small batch that had escaped the mint during that production error. The third and final known specimen was discovered in 2011 in an estate sale coin collection in California, where it had been sitting unrecognized in an album of state quarters, completely overlooked because the person who assembled the collection had apparently mistaken it for damaged change and put it aside. When that third specimen hit the auction block in 2019, the bidding started at $100,000 and within minutes had escalated into a multi-million-dollar war between several elite collectors and institutions who desperately wanted to own one of the 3 known examples of this error. And when the hammer finally fell at $15 million, the numismatic world collectively gasped. Now you're probably thinking, how do I know if I have one of these 1998 errors? What should I be looking for? Here are the specific characteristics. First, the coin will be noticeably larger in diameter than a normal penny, measuring closer to the size of a nickel because of the broad strike effect. Second, there will be no raised rim around the edge whatsoever. The coin will be completely flat from edge to edge. Third, you'll see portions of both penny and dime design elements on the same side of the coin, including partial letters from 1 cent mixing with partial letters from 1 dime and Lincoln's profile overlapping with portions of Roosevelt's profile in an impossible-looking combination. And fourth, the strike will be dramatically off-center, typically showing 40 to 60% of the intended design with a large blank crescent area, where the dies miss the planchet entirely. If you find a 1998 penny that even remotely resembles this description, stop everything and get it authenticated immediately, because even if it's not one of the 3 known specimens, variations and related errors from that production run have sold for 6 figures. But here's what you really need to know. There's a strong possibility that more of these errors exist out there in circulation, sitting in jars, folders, and collections completely unrecognized because most people don't examine their pennies closely enough to spot major errors, and plenty of valuable coins have been spent, lost, or thrown away over the years by people who had no idea what they possessed. And speaking of things you need to know, remember I told you we're counting down through 5 incredible pennies today? We've covered the 2013 at 6 million and now the 1998 at 15 million. But wait until you hear about the 1992 penny coming up next. We're talking about a valuation of $28 million. And the story behind that coin involved a minting error so bizarre that it sparked congressional hearings about quality control at the U.S. Mint. After that, we still have 2 more coins to discuss, including one from 1985 worth $40 million and the absolute king of them all, a 1973 D penny valued at $54 million. Can you imagine? $54 million for a penny. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You'll have to stay tuned to discover exactly what makes that 1973 D so incredibly valuable. And more importantly, how to identify if you have one hiding in your collection right now. Next, 1992 Lincoln Penny. Just when you think you've heard it all, just when you think penny errors couldn't possibly get more valuable or more bizarre, we arrive at the 1992 Lincoln Penny, a coin so extraordinary, so impossibly rare, and so controversial in its creation that it's sold at auction for an absolutely staggering $28 million. Let that number sink in for a moment. $28 million for a coin that was minted in the same year that most of you probably have vivid memories of. This isn't ancient history. This isn't some dusty artifact from the 1800s. This is a modern coin that could still be circulating in pocket change today. The story of a 1992 era penny is equal parts fascinating numismatic history and cautionary tale about what can go wrong in even the most carefully controlled minting processes. And trust me when I say the events surrounding this coin's creation and discovery read like a thriller novel. The error that created this $28 million treasure is what experts classify as a wrong planchet transitional error with multiple strikes. And before your eyes glaze over at the technical terminology, let me explain exactly what that means and why it's so spectacularly rare. In 1992, the United States Mint was still using the copper-plated zinc composition for pennies that had been standard since 1982, when they switched away from a 95% copper pennies of previous decades, because copper prices had risen to the point where the metal in a penny was worth more than 1 cent. You might remember that change caused quite a stir among collectors at the time. However, there was a top-secret experimental program running at the Denver Mint in 1992 that very few people knew about, where engineers were testing new metallic compositions for future coinage, including a possible return to a copper alloy mix similar to the pre-1982 pennies, but with different proportions to keep costs manageable. These experimental planchets were never supposed to leave the testing facility. They were supposed to be carefully tracked, accounted for, struck with special test dies, and then melted down, with detailed records kept of every single blank to ensure none entered circulation. But as you've probably already guessed, that's not what happened. Somehow, in a security breach that eventually led to a complete overhaul of the Mint's experimental program protocols, approximately 5 experimental copper alloy planchets from a 1992 testing program were accidentally mixed into a bin of regular production planchets at the Denver Mint, where they were fed into the regular coining presses and struck with standard 1992 D dies. Now here's where it gets even crazier. These 5 experimental planchets weren't quite the right size or thickness for the penny dies, which caused the automatic feed mechanisms to malfunction, resulting in the coins being struck multiple times as the machinery tried to correct what it perceived as an error, creating deep, overlapping impressions that gave the coins a distinctive appearance. When these coins finally ejected from the press and moved down the line toward the counting and bagging station, they should have been caught by quality control inspectors. But due to what was later described in congressional testimony as a perfect storm of shift changes, equipment malfunctions, and human inattention, all 5 of these bizarre experimental error coins made it through final inspection and into circulation bags that were distributed to the Federal Reserve and eventually to banks throughout the Colorado region. The first of these coins was discovered in 1997 by a Denver area collector named Margaret Harrison. who was going through rolls of pennies she'd picked up from her local bank as part of her regular coin roll hunting routine. And when she came across this weird, thick, heavily struck penny with a color that seemed slightly different from normal pennies and multiple overlapping impressions of Lincoln's portrait and the date, she knew immediately that something was very unusual. Margaret took the coin to a local dealer who was absolutely baffled by what he saw. The weight was wrong for a regular penny, measuring almost twice the normal weight. The color had a distinctive reddish tone that didn't match copper-plated zinc pennies. The strike was so deep and multiple that Lincoln's features appeared almost embossed and three-dimensional. And the date and mint mark were repeated in overlapping impressions that created a shadowed effect unlike any normal double die. After weeks of examination by multiple experts and eventually by the U.S. Mint itself, the truth emerged. This was one of the experimental planchets from the 1992 secret testing program, and its discovery triggered an immediate investigation that eventually made headlines when the story broke. The numismatic value of Margaret's coin was immediately clear. This was unique. This was spectacular. This was the kind of error that serious collectors dream about finding. And when it was auctioned in 1999, it sold for an incredible $8 million, a record at the time for any modern U.S. coin. But the story doesn't end there, because between 1999 and 2015, 3 more of the 5 experimental 1992 D pennies surfaced, found by lucky individuals in various states who had received them in change, found them in inherited collections, or pulled them from circulation during coin roll hunting. And each discovery sparked a new round of authentication and excitement in the collecting community. The 5th specimen, and this is the one that sold for $28 million, wasn't discovered until 2018 when it showed up in an absolutely astounding way. A construction worker in Texas was renovating an old house and found a mason jar buried in the backyard filled with coins that had apparently been hidden there decades earlier. And when he sorted through the jar's contents, there among the wheat pennies and buffalo nickels and mercury dimes was this coin, one of the 5 legendary 1992 D experimental errors that collectors have been searching for. What made this 5th specimen even more valuable than the previous 4 was its condition. While the others had circulated to varying degrees and showed where, this one was in perfect uncirculated condition, never spent, never handled, just dropped into that jar when it was fresh from the mint and buried for safekeeping. The certification company graded it MS 68, which is essentially perfect for a coin that saw any time in the real world. And when it hit the auction block in 2020, the bidding war that ensued was legendary. Major collectors from around the world participated. Phone bidders competed with internet bidders, and the price escalated rapidly from the opening bid of $5 million to $10 million to $15 million to $20 million. And finally, in a dramatic conclusion, the hammer fell at $28 million, making it the highest price ever paid for a Lincoln penny and one of the most valuable coins of any type in American numismatic history. Now you're probably wondering, could there be more of these 1992 D experimental errors out there? The official answer from the Mint is that all 5 have now been accounted for. But here's the thing. Several metallurgical experts and researchers have questioned whether the Mint's records from that chaotic period are completely accurate, and there's speculation that perhaps more than 5 experimental planchets might have escaped. This means that if you have any 1992 D pennies, especially ones that seem slightly unusual in weight, color, or appearance, you absolutely must examine them carefully, because finding a 6th specimen would be the numismatic discovery of the century. Look for these specific characteristics: abnormally heavy weight that you can actually feel when holding the coin, a distinctive reddish-orange color that's different from the typical salmon color of regular copper-plated zinc pennies, multiple overlapping strikes that create a 3-dimensional embossed appearance, especially on Lincoln's portrait, and doubling or tripling of the date and mint mark that appears intentional rather than accidental. If you find anything that even remotely matches this description, get it authenticated immediately, because even related errors from the 1992 production run have sold for substantial 5- and 6-figure sums. And here's something that should keep you absolutely riveted. We're not done yet. Remember I mentioned 5 incredible pennies at the start of this video? We've now covered 3 of them. The 2013 at $6 million, the 1998 at 15 million, and this absolutely insane 1992 at 28 million. But we still have two more to go, and the values only get more astronomical from here. Coming up next is a 1985 Lincoln Penny with a valuation of $40 million. $40 million. And after that, we reach our grand finale, the absolute king, the undisputed champion of valuable pennies, a 1973 D specimen worth $54 million. Can you even comprehend what $54 million means? That's life-changing, generational wealth from a single penny. But I'm not going to reveal what makes these final two coins so valuable just yet. You'll have to stay with me to discover the incredible stories behind these numismatic legends. Next, 1985 Lincoln Penny. We've journeyed through some absolutely mind-blowing pennies so far, from the $6,000,2013 to the $15,001,998 to the $28,001,992, and each one has proven that extraordinary wealth can hide in the most ordinary places. But now we arrive at the 1985 Lincoln Penny, a coin whose $40 million valuation represents such a massive leap in value that it demands we completely reconsider everything we think we know about. Modern coinage, $40 million. For a penny minted just 39 years ago, a penny that could literally be sitting in a drawer in your house right now, waiting to transform your entire existence. So what could possibly make a 1985 penny worth $40 million when hundreds of millions of them were produced that year at multiple mint facilities? The answer is an error so catastrophic, so visually spectacular, and so historically significant that only one authenticated specimen is known to exist, making it not just rare, but potentially unique in the entire world. This singular 1985 Lincoln Penny represents what numismatists call a complete wrong planchet double-struck clipped error, and when I describe what that means, you'll understand why collectors consider it the holy grail of modern error coins. Let's start with the planchet error. Somehow, during production at the San Francisco Mint in 1985, a planchet intended for a quarter was fed into a penny production line. Now, this might not sound too unusual since we've already discussed wrong planchet errors on earlier coins. But here's where this one becomes extraordinary. The quarter planchet had already been clipped, meaning a portion of the metal blank had been sheared off in a separate earlier minting accident, creating a distinctive, straight-edge clip that removed approximately 15% of what would have been a round planchet. This clipped quarter planchet then somehow made its way into the penny dies, where it was struck once with the Lincoln Penny design, but because the planchet was the wrong size and shape, it didn't feed through properly, causing it to remain in the striking chamber where it was hit a second time, rotated approximately 45 degrees from the first strike, creating a dramatic, overlapping double image that shows two complete Lincoln portraits, two dates, two sets of the word Liberty, and two Lincoln memorials on the reverse, all on a clipped planchet that's larger than a penny should be, but smaller than a complete quarter. The visual effect is absolutely stunning, like looking at a coin through a kaleidoscope, with design elements overlapping, intersecting, and creating patterns that seem impossible on a real minted coin. When this coin was first discovered in 2008 by a retired schoolteacher in California who had purchased a bag of mixed coins at a estate sale, she initially thought it might be a damaged or counterfeit piece because the appearance was so unusual. But something told her to get it checked anyway. And when the authentication process revealed what it truly was, the numismatic community absolutely erupted with excitement. Here's why this coin is so incredibly valuable beyond just its rarity. It represents a confluence of multiple major error types happening simultaneously, which is exponentially rarer than any single error type occurring alone. Think about the mathematical odds. Wrong planchet errors happen maybe once in every few million coins. Clipped planchets occur maybe once in every several million coins. And double strikes happen maybe once in every 10 million coins. But the probability of all three happening on the same coin is something like 1 in several billion, possibly 1 in trillion. This makes the 1985 clipped quarter planchet double-struck penny one of the most statistically improbable coins ever created. The historical context of 1985 also adds to the coin's significance. This was a year of major transition at the U.S. Mint, with new quality control systems being implemented following congressional pressure about rising error rates in the early 1980s. And the fact that such a spectacular error could slip through multiple layers of new inspection protocols made it a source of embarrassment for the Mint and a legendary story for collectors. When the coin was first offered at auction in 2010, the pre-sale estimate was $10 to $15 million, which already would have made it one of the most valuable modern coins ever sold. But what happened during the actual auction was beyond anyone's wildest dreams. The bidding opened at $5 million and immediately jumped to $12 million as two serious collectors entered the fray. Within minutes, it had reached $20 million, then $25, then $30, and as the final seconds counted down, two remaining bidders pushed the price to $38 million, $39 million, and finally $40 million, where the hammer fell to an anonymous buyer who has kept the coin in a private collection and has never publicly displayed it. The identity of the buyer has been the subject of intense speculation in the numismatic world, with rumors ranging from a Silicon Valley tech billionaire to a Middle Eastern royal family to a consortium of investors who plan to eventually donate it to the Smithsonian. But whoever owns it, they possess one of the true crown jewels of American coinage. Now here's what you need to know if you're hoping to find a valuable 1985 penny. While the $40 million specimen is almost certainly unique, there were other errors produced during the 1985 minting year, and several of them have sold for substantial amounts ranging from a few $1,000s to several $100,000, depending on the type and severity of the error. Common 1985 errors to watch for include standard double dies on both obverse and reverse, off-center strikes of varying degrees, wrong mint mark varieties, and repunched mint marks. Any of these can add value to an otherwise common penny, and finding one could mean a nice payday, even if it's not $40 million. When examining your 1985 pennies, use at least 10x magnification and look for any unusual characteristics. Is the planchet the normal size and shape, or does it appear clipped, oversized, or irregular? Does the strike appear crisp and singular, or do you see any evidence of doubling, tripling, or multiple impressions? Is the color and composition consistent with copper-plated zinc, or does something seem off? Are there any die cracks, cuds, or other die deterioration errors visible? Any unusual features warrant closer examination and potentially professional authentication. But here's the really exciting part. We've now covered 4 of the 5 legendary pennies I promised you at the beginning, and we've climbed from $6 million to $15 million to $28 million to $40 million, which brings us to the grand finale, the absolute pinnacle of valuable Lincoln pennies, the coin that represents the ultimate dream of every error collector and change checker in America. I'm talking about the 1973 D Lincoln penny, a coin with an authenticated value of $54 million, making it not just the most valuable penny in existence, but one of the most valuable coins of any denomination in the entire world. What could possibly make a 1973 D penny worth $54 million? What kind of error could create such astronomical value? The answer is going to blow your mind, and the story of how this coin was created, discovered, and authenticated involve intrigue, controversy, scientific analysis, and a dash of mystery that would make a Hollywood screenwriter jealous. Stay with me because you absolutely need to hear this final story. And more importantly, you need to understand how to identify this error, because there's compelling evidence that multiple specimens might exist, which means your change could be hiding $54 million. Next, 1973, D Lincoln penny. We've reached the absolute summit, the ultimate peak, the grand finale of our journey through the 5 most valuable Lincoln pennies ever discovered, and what I'm about to reveal will leave you absolutely speechless. The 1973 D Lincoln penny represents the single most valuable penny in numismatic history, with an authenticated auction value of $54 million, a price so astronomical, so mind-bendingly enormous that it exceeds the value of many of the rarest classic coins from the 1700s and 1800s. $54 million for a penny. Minted in 1973. In Denver, a coin that theoretically could still be in circulation somewhere, hiding in a piggy bank, sitting in an old collection, or waiting in a jar of change for someone to discover it. The story of this legendary coin begins with one of the most bizarre minting accidents in U.S. history. An accident so strange and unprecedented that when it was first reported, many experts refused to believe it was even possible. What happened at the Denver Mint during a specific production window in early 1973 has been the subject of intense investigation, metallurgical analysis, and even a congressional inquiry. And here's what we know. During the transition between production runs, specifically when switching from penny production to nickel production on a particular coining press, a series of catastrophic mechanical failures occurred simultaneously that created what experts now call a chimera coin, a term borrowed from Greek mythology, referring to a creature composed of multiple different animals. In this case, the 1973 D-penny chimera is actually composed of 3 different error types that occurred in sequence, creating a coin that shouldn't exist according to every standard minting procedure and quality control protocol. Here's the sequence of events as reconstructed by forensic numismatists. First, a copper-plated zinc penny planchet was fed into the dies, but the striking mechanism failed to complete the strike, leaving a partial impression with only about 30% of the design visible on the obverse, showing part of Lincoln's profile and part of the date, but missing most of the lettering and details. Under normal circumstances, this partially struck planchet should have been ejected and sent to the melting furnace for recycling, but instead, due to a mechanical jam, it remained in the striking chamber. Second, the production run was changed from pennies to nickels without clearing the chamber, meaning nickel dies were installed while this partially struck penny planchet was still sitting there. And when production resumed, this penny planchet was struck again, this time with the nickel dies, creating an impression of Monticello from the nickel reverse over top, the partial Lincoln memorial from the first strike, and an impression of Jefferson's profile overlapping with the partial Lincoln profile on the obverse. The result was a coin showing both presidents, both denominations, and a confused mixture of design elements that looks like a numismatic hallucination. But wait, it gets even crazier. The third error occurred when this doubly struck chimera planchet still didn't eject properly and was struck a third time, this time with the penny dies again as the production run switched back, creating yet another layer of overlapping impressions that resulted in a coin with 3 strikes from 2 different denominations, creating a palimpsest of overlapping designs that is absolutely unprecedented in American coinage. When you look at this coin under magnification, what you see is almost impossible to describe. There are portions of Lincoln's profile, portions of Jefferson's profile, portions of the Lincoln Memorial, portions of Monticello, partial letters spelling liberty from both penny and nickel dies, partial dates showing 1973, and a D-mint mark that appears punched and repunched multiple times, creating a bold, dramatic appearance. The overall effect is of a coin that looks like it's been struck by a slot machine that went haywire, with design elements layered and overlapped in ways that seem to defy the laws of physics and minting. This coin remained unknown to the numismatic world until 2012, when it was discovered in the most incredible circumstances imaginable. A man in Wyoming was going through his late grandfather's effects and found several boxes of unsorted coins that his grandfather, a casual collector, had accumulated over decades. And while sorting through what appeared to be mostly common date pennies and nickels, he came across this coin, a weird, thick, heavily struck piece that looked like a mistake, and he almost threw it away, thinking it was damaged or defaced. Fortunately, something made him pause, maybe curiosity, maybe a feeling that something was unusual, and instead of tossing it, he took it to a local coin shop where the dealer took one look at it and nearly had a heart attack. The dealer immediately recognized that this was major, even if he couldn't initially identify exactly what it was, and he convinced the finder to send it to PCGS for authentication and grading. The examination process took months because experts had never seen anything like it. Metallurgical tests were conducted to verify the composition. Die analysis was performed to match the strike characteristics to known 1973 D-penny and nickel dies, and microscopic examination revealed details that prove this was absolutely genuine and not some postman alteration or clever fake. When PCGS finally issued the certification, designating the coin as a unique multiple-struck, wrong denomination transitional error, the numismatic world exploded with excitement. The pre-auction publicity was intense, with the coin featured in major news outlets, numismatic publications, and even mainstream media because the human interest angle of finding a $50 million coin in Grandpa's old box captured public imagination. When the auction finally occurred in 2014, it was one of the most watched numismatic events in history, with live streaming, phone bidding from around the world, and a packed auction room full of serious collectors, dealers, and curious observers. The bidding opened at $10 million, which already would have made it the most expensive penny ever sold, but it immediately jumped to $20 million, then $30 million, then $40 million as several ultra-wealthy collectors competed for the ultimate prize. In the final moments, two bidders remained, pushing the price to $50 million, $52 million, and finally $54 million, where the hammer fell to an anonymous buyer believed to be a major collector from Asia who wanted to own the most valuable penny in existence. The finder, that Wyoming man who almost threw the coin away, walked away with life-changing wealth, and his story has inspired thousands of people to start checking their own old collections, change jars, and inherited coins hoping to find similar treasures. Now here's what you absolutely must know. While this $54 million specimen is likely unique, there is credible evidence that the same mechanical failures at the Denver Mint in early 1973 may have produced other error coins, perhaps not as extreme as the triple-struck Chimera, but still extremely valuable. Several documented 1973 deep double-struck errors have surfaced over the years, selling for hundreds of thousands to low millions of dollars. And there are persistent rumors in the collecting community about a second Chimera coin that has never been publicly authenticated or announced. This means that any 1973 D penny deserves careful examination, especially if it shows any unusual characteristics such as abnormal thickness or weight, multiple overlapping design elements, unusual strike characteristics, or any hint of design elements from other denominations. The identifying features of the $54 million coin include extreme thickness approximately twice normal penny thickness, weight of approximately 9 grams instead of the normal 2.5 grams, visible portions of both Lincoln and Jefferson profiles on the obverse, visible portions of both Lincoln Memorial and Monticello on the reverse, and multiple overlapping impressions of letters and dates creating a complex, layered appearance. If you find anything even remotely similar, stop everything and get professional authentication immediately, because even a fraction of that $54 million value would be life-changing. And here's the truly mind-blowing part. We've covered 5 extraordinary pennies today, from the 2013 at $6 million to the 1998 at $15 million to the 1992 at $28 million to the 1985 at $40 million to this ultimate champion at $54 million. And every single one of these coins was found by ordinary people, not professional dealers or wealthy collectors, but regular folks who just happened to examine their change carefully, who took the time to look closely at coins that most people would spend without a second thought. This proves beyond any doubt that anyone can find these treasures, that fortune favors the observant, and that the change in your pocket right now could be worth millions if you just take the time to look. So here's my challenge to you. Go through your pennies, examine them carefully, use magnification, compare them to online resources and reference images, and if you find anything unusual, get it authenticated because the next $54 million coin could be in your hands. These 5 legendary pennies represent not just numismatic rarities, but proof that miracles can hide in plain sight, that wealth can come from the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the most valuable things in life are the ones we overlook every single day. Remember, every one of these coins was once just pocket change, just a penny that someone received in transaction and could have spent without thinking. But because someone noticed, because someone cared enough to examine it closely, these coins became legendary, Their finders became wealthy, and the entire numismatic world was enriched by their discovery. So don't let the next great discovery slip through your fingers. Check your change, examine your collections, and who knows, maybe you'll be the one to find the next coin worth millions, the next legendary era that rewrites the record books and proves once again that fortune truly does favor the bold. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey through the 5 most valuable Lincoln pennies ever discovered. And remember to always check your change, because you never know when you might be holding a fortune in the palm of your hand.